morning and welcome to Morning Movie News. Disney's Frozen is in the headlines once again. Yes, it's the movie that simply won't go away, and that's because the fans don't want it to go away. There is intense fan interest in this property, and as we've discussed several times now, Disney has really been caught unawares with the popularity and success of Frozen, and as a result have been playing catch-up for quite some time because they just weren't prepared to capitalize, as I said, on that success. But yesterday they took a major sprint forward with the announcement that they're going to have a themed activity area, multiple areas, set up in Disney's Hollywood studios starting July 5th through September 1st. And I think this is the first major push we've seen for Frozen in the theme parks beyond a meet and greet, and also I believe there's a float featuring Anna and Elsa in the current daytime parade at the Magic Kingdom. Yes, I am a Disney-phile. I keep my ear to the ground out of personal interest. And then when I saw this story, I knew it was something we should discuss. And you know, theme parks are becoming very big business for movies in general. For instance, we'll just take a little bit of a side trip here. We'll get back to the Frozen the coverage in a minute, but I just want to, some of you before have asked, do theme parks really matter? And the answer is not only do they matter, but they're becoming even more important to the movie business. I think the Wizarding World of Harry Potter was a big game changer because it showed that not only Disney could do this. I mean, Universal Studios, of course, has been around for a long time, but it didn't have quite the same level of theming, or I would guess you could say fervent, fan fervor as the Disney theme parks have had. But Wizarding World of Power has been a legitimate contender in the Orlando area. In fact, Warner Brothers will be launching when it was announced in Universal Studios Osaka in Japan very shortly. So that's also because they're going to have now 2 of them. And I think there's been some discussion about maybe bringing it to Los Angeles. So the Wizarding World of Harry Potter isn't going away, and it doesn't need to because Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them is coming soon. And don't think for a second that continuing that franchise doesn't also play into wanting to keep up the popularity of these theme parks, and of course the tour that Warner Brothers has out in London at their Leavesden studio. Yes, I believe they own Leavesden. Then there's also some news, of course. Fox has licensed their characters to a theme park in Malaysia, and they also are thinking of doing one in China and Brazil. Then, of course, DreamWorks Animation has a huge complex they're building in Shanghai. It's not only supposed to home Oriental DreamWorks, the Asian arm of their animation studio that they recently made a deal with. I talked about this on my coverage of Kung Fu Panda 3. But this facility will not only have shopping and a movie theater, but also an indoor theme park. And then they said they want to do similar ones in Moscow, St. Petersburg, and other parts of the world. And of course, Disney is building yet another theme park in Shanghai, which is set, by the way, speaking of princesses, to have the biggest, most interactive castle yet, smack in the center of it. I don't know if you've seen the plans for this. I'll try and dig them up and put them in the video description, but they're spectacular. Also, finally, Lionsgate is very seriously considering not just a Hunger Games tour, which will go kind of like the Purge Anarchy tour that's going around the country right now, but they want to have a Hunger Games tour, probably maybe worldwide, because that's a worldwide property, and then they want to see if that does well enough. So if you would like to see a Hunger Games theme park, go on the tour because it's kind of a test for that kind of a choice next. So, but Disney continues to be at the forefront, although Warner Brothers, Disney and Warner Brothers really do go up against each other a lot these days, which I think is fascinating. They have, of course, in comic books, but then also a fairy tale fantasy, the live action, they both have Peter Pan. Warner Brothers is doing Peter Pan. They both have Jungle Book properties coming up. I'm sorry, I'm a little tired today. I was up very late last night seeing Transformers, and my review will be up shortly, if not already, over on the original Beyond the Trailer channel, both a regular review and a spoiler review. But anyway, Disney and Warner Brothers competing quite heavily, and interestingly, they are the ones to give Disney the biggest run for their money in the theme park arena with their Harry Potter Wizarding Worlds. All right, so let's go back to what's going on with Frozen. Now, Disney's Hollywood Studios, again, from July 5th through September 1st, will have quite a bit of Frozen theming and activities. So let's start off. There are a couple of things. I'm going to go through each one. And if you're in the Orlando area or going to visit it or considering going to visit it, if you're a Frozen fan, this might be the tipping point that makes you decide to actually go. And you should definitely check out Hollywood Studios while you're there. All right, so the first thing is that Olaf will be giving updates in the park, I guess on a giant screen, because at the end of the day, in his grand finale, when he talks about what he did during his summer vacation, he might include your photo from the day, if you use a hashtag Olaf Summer Vacation. They do a similar thing right now, I believe, in the Magic Kingdom. There's a show where they project pictures onto the Cinderella's castle. Via that technology, they can make things, make things appear, look like the walls are moving. It's used at Saks Fifth Avenue at New York City for Christmas time. They used something about that recently. I think for maybe it was the Jubilee, the Queen's Jubilee. They did something like that on Buckingham Palace. You might recall. It's a very cool technology. So that's one thing that you can do. Also, every day at 11 a.m., Anna and Elsa will have a royal procession down Hollywood Boulevard, and not only will they be there, but Kristoff will be there. Yes, Kristoff is finally coming to the theme parks live, so you'll have, there might be a Kristoff meet and greet then coming up very shortly. But not only will it be Anna, Elsa, and Kristoff in this royal procession, but there will be a lot of parade-type performers. So they say procession, but I feel it's really going to be a daily parade, and it'll culminate at the Sorcerer's Hat, where there'll be a little ceremony to welcome Anna and Elsa with their royal tour. That's the idea behind this, that they're going on a royal tour, much like Prince William and Princess Kate, to just go and say hello to everybody. So Arundel's finally doing some diplomacy. It's nice to see Anna and Elsa not ignoring their royal duties, which also involves a parade for you. How fun! Then also, you can go to the Frozen Sing-Along celebration at the Premier Theater, where Anna and Elsa, along with the royal historians, I'm guessing improv performers, will tell the story of what happened in Arundel with lots of jokes and sing-along moments. So that's another thing. People like stage shows. Hot summer in Orlando. You can cool off. But speaking of cooling off, you can also head over to Soundstage 1. You might notice, I know I'm very familiar with Disney's Hollywood Studios, where Oaken, he's the guy who sells, quality goods in Arundel. He has set up a frozen play area, which includes, I believe, an ice skating rink. I don't know if the public can use the ice skating rink, but there'll be ice skating demonstrations. Build a snowman, fun area. I don't know if it'll have real snow or not, but some kind of snow simulation. And then also there will be Frozen-inspired merchandise. Been a little light on the Frozen merchandise. Maybe they'll be making more if they're going to have this whole area for it. And of course, I think quite, the pilgrimage of Frozen fans to see all this celebration, because this is the biggest thing Disney's done to date. And then also food, Frozen-inspired food. Maybe they'll just get the Norway Pavilion to cater, but that's a great choice as well. And then two final things that I think are my favorite. One, at 5:30 every day, there'll be the Frozen Dance Party, something like the coolest party of the summer. And they'll have a DJ, and not only will they be playing today's popular music, but also remixes of your favorite Frozen songs. And the Disney dance parties are actually very well done. And then finally, every night at 9:45, before the park closes, they will have, wait for it, Frozen fireworks. That's my favorite thing, because I think that the power they created for Elsa, it kind of had a fireworks look to it. So if they have lots of blue and white fireworks with the music, I think that could be something that's really quite well done. So bravo to Disney for finally doing something with the Frozen property. And I think you can see by the scope of this, they're basically turning Hollywood Studios into Frozen Land for a few months, that more Frozen stuff is coming, and that Frozen is going to become a very big part of the Disney theme parks permanently, probably in the near future. Because, oh, by the way, speaking of theme parks, if you've seen Transformers 4, there's quite a bit of theme park moments in it. I thought that was very interesting as well. But expect to see a major transformation, and, probably the way that Toy Story has been incorporated into the theme parks and become a major area, not only with the Toy Story Mania ride, but also with, actual lands in some of the overseas parks. I believe France, Disneyland Paris has a Toy Story land, and then I think also over in Asia, one of the parks there has a Toy Story land. Why do we never have the cool stuff here in the United States? Well, we're getting Avatar Land, so yet another movie property that's going to be a theme park, and that'll be over in Animal Kingdom, I believe in 2017, but they're starting to build it now. All right, so that's the first story of the day. I wonder how many of you skipped it, because I think, well, as there are many Frozen fans here, I think a number of you are not Frozen fans, and certainly not Disney fans. All right. So let's move over to the second news of the day. I had another story slated for this, but this was a big announcement late last night from Guillermo del Toro and Legendary Pictures. Not only did they announce they were indeed going to make a sequel to Pacific Rim, but that they decided, they made the second announcement via a video right here on YouTube. I'll put a link below in the video description. I think it's fascinating that Legendary has a YouTube channel and doesn't seem to be utilizing it, I think, to the best of their capabilities. But they put Guillermo del Toro on it. He said, "Oh, I'm taking a break from Crimson Peak to bring Legendary fans." I do think, and again, this is another instance of brand building. We recently talked about how one of you thinks A24, the distribution company behind the Rover, the Bling Ring, Spring Breakers, does a very good job with its outreach and its brand building. So I think it's interesting that Legendary is trying to do the same, trying to build a lot of name recognition right up there perhaps with the studios, or maybe Marvel Studios in particular. But Guillermo del Toro, after the Pacific Rim 2 was announced, he also came out with this video and said, well, not only that, but we're going to do an animated series and continue with that comic book. As you might recall, there was a prequel to Pacific Rim 2 that was released. It was a comic by the screenwriters of the film. And some of you had said, well, the comic answered a lot of the questions left unanswered by the film. But as I always say, movies shouldn't have homework. It might extra reading material might enrich your experience, but you should be able to walk into a movie without having done any homework. So anyway, they're going to continue with this, I think to the delight probably of many of you, because Pacific Rim, while not a huge success, I'll break down the numbers in a moment, because I do think it's an odd choice to continue with this franchise, but some of you really took to it and were disappointed that most of the world did not. All right, so let's get down to these numbers, because I know a lot of you are going to be eager to discuss them. A lot of people out there defend Pacific Rim, which is great, and this is a great day for you. I mean, Guillermo del Toro and Legendary Pictures have heard you, but I also think they've heard something else, which I'll get to in a moment. But anyway, Pacific Rim made $101 million domestic, and then it made $309 million overseas, a big chunk of that coming from China, literally a third. 111 was brought in by China. And then, so that makes for a worldwide total of about 411 million. But now remember, Pacific Rim had a $200 million budget, and that doesn't include advertising. So once again, I want to remind you that studios only get half of a box office haul. The way the split breaks down, half goes to the theaters, half goes to the studios. This is an age-old industry calculation. It's the industry norm. This is how success is decided and measured. And I think it's kind of like, if you go in there and you try and nitpick it, it's kind of like saying, maybe you're right. Some of you are right. Maybe the studios just made this myth up so they can do their crazy accounting. But it's kind of like saying, hey, why don't we measure box office gross with taking into account inflation? It just isn't done. And you can be that lone crazy person out there running there, that Doc Brown, that scientist, saying, you're all wrong. But you know what? Sometimes you have to go with the pack, because the pack just simply isn't moving. And we don't measure box office numbers by inflation, and it's decided that the profit of a film, the take-home for a studio, not the profit, but the take-home, is half of the domestic haul. So that means, not including advertising, Pacific Rim just about broke even. Maybe it's doing great business in the ancillary markets, on demand, streaming, maybe people are renting it in hotel rooms or watching it on airplanes, who knows? Or maybe the merchandise is doing okay, although I haven't seen a lot of Pacific Rim merchandise. But anyway, regardless, they're moving forward. Now, I think the reason they might be moving forward is Godzilla. I think they looked at the success of another kaiju film just a year later and were like, there's an audience here, and you know what? They weren't totally pleased with Godzilla either. Maybe we can get back in there. And of course, while both films are from Legendary Pictures as a production company, Pacific Rim is a Universal release now, I believe, or at least it's switched over to there. I don't know if it always was a Universal release. I think it was. I'm sorry, I didn't get a chance to look that up. It didn't occur to me about the differentiation right now. But anyway, this is going forward a Universal property. And so, it's not a direct competition with Warner Brothers in terms of studios. I mean, I do feel that Legendary is kind of cannibalizing its own audience. And I think there's clearly more interest in Godzilla. They have a $37 million opening for Pacific Rim, a $93 million opening for Godzilla. But maybe, the Pacific Rim and Guillermo del Toro, the filmmakers overall, went to watch Godzilla and took some notes. Who knows? As I said, people weren't totally happy with Godzilla either. I think it's actually contributed a little bit to the summer doldrums at the box office that we've been experiencing. I think the big culprits are Godzilla and Amazing Spider-Man 2. Because when you think about it overall, we've had some pretty good movies this summer. But for some reason, the box office is in a bit of a funk. We'll see if Transformers, gets us out of it. But I'm curious to what you guys think of the Pacific Rim sequel, an animated series, and comic book. Will you watch all of this? Are you excited? Or have you moved over to Godzilla? Or were you never excited about Pacific Rim? And then Godzilla just kind of was the final giant nail in the coffin of your interest in kaiju movies today. I think this is, as I said again, Godzilla proved that there's clearly money here, but I don't know if it's a long-term resource, financial resource to Hollywood. It might have been a one-off that just didn't work out, and Hollywood was unable to capitalize on a unique opportunity. We'll see. We'll see. All right, so the third story of the day is a fun story. The third story, I can't really go into the metadata, so I always use this to try and, bring in a smaller story that, I think is interesting but isn't a huge audience draw. Not a lot of people are interested in. And that's that yesterday it was released who was being invited to join the Academy. Every year the Academy invites new members in Hollywood, both in front of and behind the camera to join, and they get to vote for the Oscars then. And I'll put the link below to the whole list so that you can see who was invited to join. But there were some fun names. For instance, Gregg, a.k.a. Agent Coulson, is now an Academy member. I think that's great. How wonderful for Gregg. He's a talented actor. One of you actually recommended Trust Me the other day, and I thought, I didn't like the way it ended, and I thought that it took a turn for the worse. I thought it was trying to be too clever for its own good. But the way the movie started was actually pretty solid. And of course, Gregg not only stars in that film, but he directed it. And I also actually interviewed him about it back at the Tribeca Film Festival last year, not this year, but the year before that. And it's taken the film that long to get a distributor, and it ended up being distributed by Starz Media. So life is tough even for Gregg. But he can he can have a highlight, I guess. I was going to say end his current year, but we're only in the middle of the year. But he can have a nice silver lining in that he has gotten the attention of the Academy. Also, Jason Statham can now vote for the Oscars. I think that's great. He, of course, has several big movies coming up, but next summer he'll be in both Fast 7 and Spy opposite Melissa McCarthy. So his career is doing very well. Then also behind the camera, Denis Villeneuve. This is the French-Canadian director behind Prisoners and Enemy, both with Jake Gyllenhaal. Prisoners, of course, was a fantastic film last year. Didn't get a lot of Oscar love itself, but I'm glad that Villeneuve is getting some Oscar love and being asked to join. I'm excited to see what he does next. And then, of course, also Megan Ellison, Larry Ellison's daughter. She has all the Oracle money behind her, but she's done quite a bit of fundraising herself. She's a big film financier and executive producer via her Annapurna Pictures, and a lot of people in Hollywood really respect her, or at least want to have lunch with her, because she really lets artists do whatever they want. She was behind The Master, for instance, Zero Dark 30, Her. She's really a creative force, especially in the more indie filmmaking community, and pumping a lot of money into it, which I think is why she's so popular. And of course, her brother is right now currently producing the Terminator reboot, and both of them are involved in Hollywood in a big way. Her brother's company is Skydance, so whenever you see the Skydance logo, that is also Oracle money. It's funny that the Oracle kids have become so powerful in Hollywood behind the scenes. Also, a big finance guy today, by the way, is Brett Ratner. You might have noticed when you saw Jersey Boys that he funded that movie and helped pay for it. So it's funny to see people's careers change in the different areas in Hollywood where you can succeed. One is being the money guy. So those are the three stories of the day. Let's move on to the viewer question. This is a unique question, but I really liked it, and it stood out to me, and it's actually from a few days ago. So Rose, I'm sorry that it took me some time to answer your question, but I saw it, and I saved it. All right, so we talked about Frozen earlier, and I think that Rose's question kind of ties into that, so that's why it works today. So Rose says, question, Dear Grace, what is your opinion on the increased romance in children's, she means 2nd to 9th grade, TV shows, and the fact that despite the increase, there is rarely any mixed race or homosexual romance? I don't like it because I think that children's TV should focus on teaching kids independence and preparing kids for what the world is really like. But what are your thoughts? Sorry I ask this so frequently, I just feel strongly about this. Thanks. Smiley face. A different kind of smiley face with an 8 and a D. I've never seen that before, but I liked it. It was like a googly eye smiley face. Thank you, Rose. And I think this is a very interesting question. Yes, I agree. There does seem to be an increase in romance in children's entertainment, although not in Frozen, interestingly enough. But yes, I think that there is an increase in that, and I think there are a lot of studies all the time about, teen pregnancy. I can't remember if it's on the rise or the fall right now, but it's always been a problem. And then that's always been, I think, a decades, maybe even generations-long debate as to when is the appropriate age to be interested in dating. That's, of course, a personal decision, and, people mature at different rates, but I think we can all agree that there shouldn't be romance for anyone in second grade. I mean, I think once you hit like 8th grade, maybe 8th or 9th grade, I think maybe you start to have crushes on, people have crushes at all ages, though. But I mean, in terms of romance, I think, it really starts, I think, where entertainment can acknowledge it. I would say, maybe you're right, I think 9th grade, I would do 2nd to 8th is what the category I would say you should not have this romance. But I mean, look at The Legend of Korra. That has romance in it. And also in the first series, those kids were pretty little, right? I mean, Aang and Katara were young. I don't know how young, but certainly not the age of Korra and Mako, right? And they're having a lot of problems. So I guess that's a warning about romance, that it's not all a walk in the park. But as for, I do think that, this is an even tougher question. Not mixed race, though, obviously, or even, homosexual romance. I think that, none of that, if you're talking about romance, you should be talking about all romance. That's how I personally feel about it. This is a very delicate conversation. And I think that if you hold off on any romance until 9th grade, that allows parents to handle their children's introduction to that as they see fit. And I think that's who should be handling the introduction. However, I will say, I want to point out something that I went to a GLSEN event. I was invited. It was back at my old company where I was. They were a sponsor, so they were, do you want to come to this GLSEN event with me? And I was like, sure. I ended up giving $100 because it was such a compelling night of speeches. GLSEN, is a support organization for gay and lesbian kids. And one teacher came up and he talked about how he'd had a very difficult experience at his old job. He no longer worked there because he had wanted to discuss gay parents or represent them in the classroom to his students. And he talked about why he did it. And he explained that to avoid that or to make it seem like it's wrong really is harmful to the children of gay parents, because when they see examples of parents in the classroom, they notice as to why their parents or a version of their parents is not up there. And I thought that was a very compelling argument. And especially as we have more and more families with gay parents, how can you ignore that? I mean, I know people have different personal beliefs, but, I think, I'm not a fan of affectionate displays of any kind in public. Get a room, everyone. And I think that, you have to be inclusive. I'm a big fan of being inclusive. And I really don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, especially a child's. And I think that, no matter what you might feel or how you might feel about this stuff, you can't deny that, especially when gay parents adopt, they're providing a wonderful opportunity for that child and taking them out of a difficult situation, out of love, out of the goodness of their hearts. Sometimes it can be difficult to adopt because, children have a troubled background. And, that should be commended, as any adopted parents should be commended. But then we have a lot of families today, gay families with, natural, children with their DNA. Again, we don't want to get into a whole discussion about how that works and everything like that, but the question is, how should it be represented in entertainment? I don't know if Roland Emmerich's still planning to do this, but I'm very excited about the idea of us having a gay character. In his he said he wanted to do it in the ID4 sequel, a gay character that wasn't there for laughs or just to be the gay character, but just was a hero and contributed to saving the day. It just happened to be gay. I think that would be very healthy. But as far as children's entertainment, I think it should try and remain as asexual as possible. Because again, this is a discussion that's up to parents to have. And even with that teacher and talking to kids, there's no romance involved there. They're just talking about parents. So I think my response to your question, Rose, is that the best way to solve this is to not discuss romance. You're right, kids should be focusing on how to do well in school and, be a kid. Why would you want to encourage someone to grow up before they needed to? I mean, you're going to be an adult a lot longer than you are a little kid. So play your games, read your comics, go to the movies, your video games, and you can worry about dating in high school when it will consume you. All right, so I'm curious to how everybody else feels about this, because, this is a difficult discussion, and, Rose is clearly very passionate about it, and there has been a lot of discussion, for instance, with Frozen and Elsa, and that, that character had a lot of, because she was so unclearly defined, she was, a beacon of hope to a lot of gay and lesbian fans of Disney animation, who, by the way, are a huge contingent of that company's fandom. And so, when is the day going to come that maybe they should be more respectful of that? Also, I do want to add, lastly, just because it's on my mind and it kind of ties in, one of the things I did not like about Transformers 4 is that they had a gay character very briefly in the movie, and they were just there for laughs. The guy at the beginning of the movie, at the movie theater with the cowboy hat on, and the handshake, I just was like, really, Michael Bay? That is a really in poor taste joke. But Michael Bay isn't known for good taste. All right, so I hope you'll check out my review of Transformers either later today or right now, depending when you're watching this. And write down below what you think of today's top 3 stories, the viewer question, and anything you'd like to see covered on Monday, and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.